Landmark, police racing to the parking lot of Privé restaurant shortly after closing time.
It's the 29th of March, 2023, and we are at Gotti's restaurant in Memphis.
Hello, my colleague Jarita Patterson is live at Privé this morning. And Jarita, restaurant closely associated with rapper Gotti, very active scene around you.
And at around 11 p.m., just as the restaurant was closing for the day, a fight broke out between 5 to 8 people in a crowded corridor inside the restaurant. Now, you must know that this is no ordinary scuffle, and the fight doesn't even end when they all leave the restaurant. This brawl moves from the entrance of the restaurant to the parking lot turned war zone, and in the blink of an eye, bullets start flying. This fist fight becomes a gunfight. In an instant, 2 lives were lost, while another 5 people were severely injured. Some of you might think this is just another day in good old Memphis. I mean, this is the most dangerous city in all of America. But word on the street is that this is no ordinary shooting or scuffle. In fact, this shooting might actually be 497 days in the making, because many believe this might be retaliation for the death of young Dolph. So is this just another random shooting, or could this be the get back for the death of Paper Route Frank? Dessert and drinks to die for.
But for the most part, usually a very quiet area, family-friendly Sunday brunch type of restaurant.
Gotti bought the Privé restaurant for his mom as a Mother's Day gift over a decade ago, and it is located in one of the peaceful neighborhoods in southeast Memphis. Priv is located on 6,980 Winchester Road in the Hickory Hill area. It has since become one of the most popular restaurants in Memphis because it is a regular spot that is accessible to everyone regardless of their social class or age. It also helps that Privé has been able to position itself as a place where even families can go to have a good time. However, perhaps the most important ingredient for the restaurant's success is the fact that everyone in Memphis knows that it is owned by Gotti. You can't deny that a number of people go to Privé because, it's Gotti's mama's restaurant. But ironically, you could also argue that this is also the reason for the restaurant's problems. For the Privé restaurant, what's responsible for her success is also her bane. Many are speculating that the restaurant was shot because it's associated with Gotti, and the only other time that Privé was on Memphis PD's radar was also because the cops know it belongs to the Memphis legend's mother. But we will get to that part in a bit. The Privé restaurant closes by 11 p.m., and on the day of the shooting, it was around this time that things got heated and physical. You see, just as the customers were making their way out of a very crowded corridor, a group of 5 to 8 people began arguing. However, you can't help but wonder, in a city like Memphis, where everyone knows almost every homie is 1 second away from pulling out that strap, why would a restaurant have a corridor that allows people to be this close? It's like a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. It all starts after the guy in the blue hoodie punches someone in the group. Then someone tosses a drink at everyone, and this is what kicks off the chaos. The men start to throw it down, and the guy in red just slams into everyone. Now, Blue Hoodie is our main character because he is the guy who takes this whole scuffle to another level. And trust me, he ain't messing around. Blue Hoodie was actually on crutches, but make no mistakes, that's no disadvantage for this man. As soon as things started getting ugly, Blue Hoodie gives his crutches to the lady behind him. And this is when he becomes truly unhinged. He starts raining punches on everyone and everything around him. The restaurant soon starts to look like a Black Friday scene at Walmart, but this time with people slamming things on each other. Restaurant security eventually find a way to quell the fight and take the men out of the building, but unfortunately the fight doesn't end here. In fact, it gets even worse. The fight spills into the parking lot, and this is where gets real and the bullets start flying. Remember, I said Blue Hoodie is our main character? Well, you are about to see why. Even though he's without crutches, Blue Hoodie is quite comfortable hopping on one leg and moves faster than anyone else at the scene. And he doesn't just do brawls or fist fights. He's not scared to take lives either. He takes out that switch and eventually starts shooting. This incident that started as just another fight eventually resulted in 7 people being shot, with 2 people losing their lives.
And we have an update to breaking news we first brought you this morning. Memphis police are making headway in their investigation of the deadly shooting at Privé, where 7 people were shot and 2 were killed.
No one knows whether Blue Hoodie is responsible for the death of any of the 2 victims. What you and I know is that he is one of the shooters. But from the video of the shooting, which is too gory to show to you, the man shot by Blue Hoodie might actually be one of those who lost their lives. One of the 2 dead victims died at the scene. The other was taken to Regional 1 Health Hospital, where he unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. Other victims of the shooting are 4 injured men and a woman who were also rushed to Regional 1 Health Hospital. Now, I can't tell you whether this shooting is definitely connected to the death of young Dolph. In fact, no one can tell you 100% that the shooting was retaliation for the death of young Dolph. However, from the information being released by the cops, you can see why many people believe that this might be a retaliatory shooting. Investigators arrived at the scene at around 11:30 p.m., and their findings revealed that apart from shooting at his ops on the night, Blue Hoodie was eventually shot as well. But Blue Hoodie wasn't even shot by any of those he was beefing with. According to the cops, the restaurant security tried to detain him, but I'm sure you know Blue Hoodie wouldn't just surrender easily. I mean, especially not after the night he just had. Instead, he allegedly pointed his Glock at the security, but these men weren't messing around and Blue Hoodie was shot faster than he could squeeze the trigger. But what makes this shooting quite intriguing is that this was no random shooting. This isn't a situation where a fight begins in a restaurant and random people are killed. According to the cops, the 2 dead victims were targeted.
This incident was not a random act. All the victims were, we believe, was targeted. There were several other victims, innocent victims involved. These 2 victims, we believe, were targeted. The other victims, we believe, possibly were bystanders that may have been struck by gunfire.
Now, this is one of the major reasons that people are speculating that this shooting might just be connected to young Dolph's death. Because if the victims were targeted, this means that the fight in the restaurant was no random occurrence. It's very possible these beefs started way back in the streets. It's also possible that the victims or Blue Hoodie and his homies are either connected to young Dolph or Yo Gotti. Could the shooters be actual gangsters known to both rappers? Or could this actually be a random incident that unfortunately just happened at Mama Gotti's restaurant? The cops also stated that after the fight in the restaurant, the men went to get their guns immediately and the bullets started flying. Also, all the men involved in this shooting are all from Memphis. And this, of course, increases the chances of them being connected to Dolph or Gotti.
My name is...
Individuals that were shot, are they from Memphis or the Memphis area?
Yes, they are. They're local.
And apart from the fact that these men are all from Memphis, according to the press, other business owners in the area allegedly state that this isn't the first time that such an incident is happening at Privé Restaurant.
Another question. We spoke to some business owners. They said there have been incidents, maybe not to this, obviously, to this standpoint, but there have been other incidents at that restaurant. Have you responded to any incidents at that restaurant recently?
I don't have any information on that at this time.
This report then makes you wonder what kind of other similar incidents have allegedly taken place at the restaurant, and could any of these other incidents also have involved Blue Hoodie? Because according to Blue Hoodie's lawyer, most of his actions on the night were carried out in self-defense. A few days after the shooting, investigators eventually arrested 3 suspects allegedly connected with the shooting in the restaurant: Damone Sykes, Johnny Sanford, and of course Kendrick Jamal Gray, the man you've known as Blue Hoodie. All 3 men were identified through the surveillance video. And I've got to say that the roles of these 3 men make this restaurant shooting seem like a scene in a John Wick movie. Sykes was arrested on the 31st of March, 2 days after the shooting. His role in this shooting can seem quite surreal. A witness who claimed to have brought Sykes to the restaurant told the cops he was wearing an orange shirt. Sykes is like the Grim Reaper who sneaks up on someone trying to detain one of the other shooters, steals his pistol, then allegedly makes the gun owner a victim by shooting him with his own gun. But even though he was one of the shooters on the night, Sykes didn't leave the restaurant unscathed. He was also shot at the restaurant, but he managed to stay alive. And this isn't even the first time that he is on the wrong side of the law. Sykes is a convicted felon who was once sent to the pen for armed robbery and conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery. This time he was charged with criminal attempted felony, first-degree murder, and aggravated robbery. Still, the man Sykes allegedly shot is one of those who is lucky to be still alive, but the man shot by Johnny Sanford is unfortunately one of the 2 who passed away. Police say during the investigation, Sanford was developed as the suspect who shot Larry Bailey. Sanford allegedly shot Larry Bailey. Bailey was the victim who was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. And just like Sykes, Sanford is no first-time offender either. Johnny pleaded guilty to robbery in 2007, but for the shooting at Privé, he was hit with a first-degree murder charge and convicted felon in possession of a handgun. Now this leaves us with one last suspect, Kendrick Gray, our man in the Blue Hoodie. Gray is allegedly responsible for the death of Terrill Alexander. Despite having just one leg to work with, Gray moved just as fast as his bullets, and after hopping swiftly from one place to another, Gray shot Terrill Alexander multiple times and he died at the scene. Well, allegedly. If you ask Gray's lawyer, he will tell you that the surveillance footage shouldn't be fully trusted and that Blue Hoodie apparently only acted in self-defense.
If you walk around a car and the man has a weapon and he's standing facing you with that weapon raised, do you wait, and he's an adversary, do you wait to see?
And if you ask Sykes' lawyer, he would tell you that his client might as well be seen as one of the victims of the shooting.
There's nothing in there that suggests that he opened fire on anyone. He was fired upon. He was shot 14 times.
Both Gray and Sanford were not at the first court hearing, and they were represented by their lawyers instead. Only Sykes appeared at the court, but even he only appeared through video, as he is still in hospital recovering from his injuries. All 3 suspects also waived their rights to a preliminary hearing, and the case will go straight before a grand jury instead. However, this isn't the only issue that might be connected to young Dolph that has happened at Privé Restaurant. Shortly after Dolph was killed in November 2021, everyone in Memphis believed that there was going to be a retaliatory attack or killing. Even the cops believed there was going to be a get back. Everyone knew the targets would be Yo Gotti, Black Youngsta, or perhaps another member of CMG. There were even rumors that Black Youngsta's home was shot at during this period. Many speculated that the attack was a classic drive-by shooting that might or might not have casualties. And shortly after, word on the street was that Yo Gotti's mother's restaurant was also attacked during this period. However, the Memphis PD dismissed both reports and stated that no retaliatory attacks happened. But this didn't stop the cops from still waiting outside the Privé Restaurant just as a precaution. And if the cops are taking precaution, that's how you know things were pretty real during this period. Because after young Dolph was killed, Memphis was at war with herself. The city was grieving on full alert, and at the same time, it was on full alert. And this makes you wonder, why do young Dolph and Yo Gotti hate each other so much? What was the reason for this beef? And who really is the king of Memphis? Battle for the king of Memphis. Who really is the king of Memphis? Unfortunately, rather than get an answer to this question, it seems we lost young Dolph to this quest of who the king of Memphis is. You see, the beef between Dolph and Gotti seems to be a classic case of when your fans become your haters, because young Dolph weren't always rivals. Dolph began his career in 2008, shortly after he was involved in a car accident. He was encouraged to release his first mixtape paper route campaign by his friends, and after seeing how successful the mixtape was in his city, and especially in South Memphis, he decided to focus fully on his rap career. And in 2010, he took it a notch higher by formally establishing his own independent label, Paper Route Empire. During this period was steady on his grind by releasing several mixtapes such as his high-class street music mixtape series, A Time to Kill and Blue Magic. His career was truly on the rise, and it didn't take long before his music caught the attention of no one other than Yo Gotti. Gotti was starting his own label, CMG, in 2012, and he offered young Dolph a contract. However, even though he was just an upcoming artist and signing with Gotti would have undoubtedly been a boost for his career, Dolph rejected the contract for 2 reasons. In an interview with Sway, he stated that if he had signed with CMG, people would believe that he only popped off because he signed with the label.
Only thing was going to happen behind it was people like, oh, he popped off because of Gotti.
Dolph stated in another interview that he did consider signing with Yo Gotti. However, the way Gotti pitched his label to him also made him reject the offer. Young Dolph stated that Gotti threw his artists under the bus while trying to get him signed to CMG.
Man tell me, he sent everybody out the studio, like, let me holler at Dolph. Like, man, you got your own everything. You popping, like, but you got the money, you got your team, you got this, you got that. Like, bro, I'm telling you, we can do this, we can do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't like Zilla. I ain't gotta hold your hand like Zilla.
If you're wondering who Zilla is, Zed Zilla is another rapper who was part of CMG at the time. But Dolph didn't like the fact that Gotti had to put down his own artist just to sign someone else. Loyalty is clearly very important to young Dolph, and it's hard to trust a man who will put down his homie for someone he barely knows.
I ain't gotta hold your hand like Zilla. You ain't like Starlito. I ain't gotta hold your hand like Starlito. I ain't gotta babysit you like that. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but it's my first time meeting you. You gonna really sit and downplay your artist and throw your artist up on the bus to try to persuade me in to come over there? So it's like a red alert the first time I met him.
According to Dolph, this is when the beef started between both artists. But even at this point, the beef hadn't become a heated rivalry just yet. Gotti even invited Dolph to do a show with him in August 2012. However, what really made these two enemies is when it was revealed that young Dolph was once involved with Yo Gotti's baby mama, and this was when the slick dissing started. On the song Scared of Me off his South Memphis Kingpin mixtape, Dolph raps, doing all that tricking on that still your baby mama. Y'all can stop sweating, I ain't gonna say y'all name. The streets know what's up. They know y'all lame. After these lyrics, Yo Gotti couldn't ignore the subliminals anymore. He eventually replied in November 2015 on his song Legendary. Gotti rapped, "You really hate me about the that some other how you gonna be a legend when you doing legendary never disrespect the king, you know you gotta see me about it." Now that last line about disrespecting the king is pretty significant. Yo Gotti always referred to himself as the king of Memphis, and he not only reminded everyone about it, but also made it clear someone was disrespecting him. Although Dolph was like the smaller artist between the two, he replied to this in the gutsiest way you could imagine. Young Dolph finally decided to drop his debut album 10 days after Gotti's dropped that song, and the title of this album, King of Memphis. I'm sure you already know what message Dolph was sending with that title. It takes some audacity to announce that you are the king of the city through your very first album, especially in a city like Memphis. That's like Kendrick Lamar coming on the Control song, calling out everybody, and then crowning himself the king of New York. Because during this period, Gotti even had King of Memphis in his Twitter bio, like some sort of badge he wore proudly. But that didn't stop Flipper, and Dolph even took this power move a step further with his release date. He stated that the album would be released on the 19th of February, but this date just happened to be the same day that Yo Gotti was going to drop his 8th studio album, The Art of Hustle. This would be the time that everyone realized that Dolph and Gotti were truly beefing. But Dolph wasn't even done yet. 2 days after announcing the release date of his debut album, he tweeted this: "Bra went from being my #1 fan and wanting to sign me to being my biggest hater." Everyone knew who these shots were directed at. And just 7 days after that Young Dolph tweet, this rivalry went from being just another rap beef to a proper street beef, where you know this goes beyond diss tracks and what happens on social media. Dolph was in Charlotte on the 28th of February to perform at a CIAA basketball tournament. However, his ops were also there to slide on him. Young Dolph's Sprinter van was shot 40 to 50 times at the Hyatt Hotel lobby. And if someone is shot 40 to 50 times, you clearly know what their ops' intentions are. But luckily, Dolph wasn't in the van at the time. Instead, it was his manager and another friend who were in the van. However, everyone knew who the 40 to 50 bullets were meant for. Unfortunately for the shooters, nearby security guards saw their getaway vehicle and took down the license number. The car was eventually stopped, and this was when one of the shooters realized he could channel his inner Usain Bolt. He decided it was a smart move for him to run. However, sometimes you are not just as fast as you think, but surely as unwise as you can imagine. He jumped out of the back seat, took to his heels, and ran into a parking lot. But he was eventually found with an AK-47. The cops eventually revealed that this accomplished runner is Howard Keon Wright. And Mr. Wright just happens to be not only Yo Gotti's road manager, but also the vice president of CMG. Wright was arrested alongside Kevin Thompson and Derek Bolton. Now, I can't tell you for sure that Gotti was somehow involved in his shooting, but remember, Wright wasn't just a road manager, he was also the vice president of CMG. He eventually took a guilty plea and was sentenced to up to 14 years in prison. But after the shooting, it was clear to everyone just how deadly this beef had become. And it was also at this point that Black Youngstar made his boss's beef his own. Black Youngstar pulls off in Dolph's hood Castalia with his goons, toting guns, and he even calls out Young Dolph.
We here right now, cuz. We in Castalia right now, cuz. What Dolph at, cuz? Where he at, cuz? Where he at? Where he at right now?
Young Dolph eventually replied to this video with his verse on Trouble's remix for the song Ready. Dolph's reply ended up being one of his best verses with his delivery, flows and bars all fitting perfectly. Any that record when it's time for gangsta, he the police. And I your boss man, baby mama, same hotel for 4 weeks. Never send a little boy to take care of grown man business. If I was you, I'd be mad at me too. So I ain't tripping riding solo in a drop top through the city. Ha, it's Dolph. Young Dolph dissed Black Youngstar and Gotti and stated that he was with his baby mama for 4 weeks. Black Youngstar replied to this with a diss track of his own. He released a diss track directly aimed at Young Dolph in March 2016 called Shake Some. Young Dolph replied to this by coming directly for Yo Gotti. This would be the first time that we would see Young Dolph call out Yo Gotti, and this time he wasn't holding back.
Hey, I've been spurring your ass for years, the whole city know that. Ho Gotti, you was a ass. I just got back to the city, they say you trying to put charges on me and put the police on me. You send your little got to do all your talking. Talk for yourself, ass.
Young Dolph then released a diss track directly aimed at Gotti on the 1st of February 2017. Dolph doubled down on his claims that he was involved with Gotti's baby mama, as the track was titled Play With Your and that cover art for the track was as disrespectful as it gets. Dolph took the disrespect to another level on this song. He didn't stop at just dissing Gotti and his baby mama. He also dissed Yo Gotti's older brother and the entire CMG. Gotti never responded to this track, but on the 26th of February, and at another CIAA event, Young Dolph was attacked once again. The attack happened at the intersection of 8th and North Caldwell Street, near the same street where his Sprinter van was shot the previous year. At around 6:30 p.m., just an hour before the championship game started, Dolph's SUV was attacked. Dolph's SUV was shot 100 times, but luckily, he came to Charlotte prepared for the possibility of an attack. His SUV was bulletproof, and he managed to stay alive. In fact, Young Dolph still performed at the show he was booked for on the same night, and at the same club, Young Dolph chose to send a message by performing his Yo Gotti diss track, Play With Your What you just saw is one of the most gangster moments in hip-hop history. Imagine getting shot at 100 times, but somehow you manage to survive, and then you get to perform the diss track directed at your ops, all on the same night. Except Young Dolph didn't have to imagine it. He lived through it all. This was his reality. He was the main character in this deadly gangster movie that was his life. None of the attackers was arrested that night, but if you think that Dolph would perhaps back down after this, then you really don't know who the legend Paper Route Frank is. A few weeks after the shooting, Dolph dropped a new album on the 1st of April titled Bulletproof. The album title pays homage to the bulletproof that saved his life during the 100-shot incident. Remember, Dolph only survived the shooting because of the bulletproof SUV, and the album cover art is young Dolph standing next to a new version of the same car he was shot in. Dolph even took it a notch higher with the track listing of this album. The album has 10 songs and the tracks are arranged in a very specific manner. Why? Because when put together, all the titles of the songs actually make a sentence that says 100 shots in Charlotte, but I'm bulletproof, so that's how I feel. I'm so real. I pray for my enemies. I'm everything you want to be, so that's why you envy. So this was another message to Yo Gotti, Black Youngstar, and the entire CMG. And on the song 100 Shots, Dolph mocked the entire situation as he rapped, 100 shots. How the f you miss a whole 100 shots? Yo Gotti seemingly replied to Dolph's disses and album at the end of a performance in Kentucky. He simply said to his fans, "You'll never see me beef on the internet, we pull up." Just a few weeks after this, the police issued an arrest warrant for Black Youngstar and 2 other men. They were all accused of being connected to the 100 Shots incident. Once again, someone connected to Yo Gotti was arrested for an attack on Young Dolph, Black Youngstar, and stated that he had nothing to do with the shooting.
I ain't fired nothing. I don't know nothing. I ain't seen nothing. I was just somebody already. Somebody snitched.
Black Youngstar was bailed out on the same day he surrendered to the police. And this isn't even the best part of this case. Black Youngstar's attorney released a statement later stating, and pay close attention to this, the van rented by Black Youngstar was stolen and used in the shooting of Young Dolph. Now, that information might sound ridiculous or like BS to you, but I ain't making this. The attorney stated that Black Youngstar turned himself in after the van was found. Youngstar was charged with 6 counts of discharging a firearm into occupied property and 1 count of felony conspiracy. However, this case led to nothing. All charges against Black Youngstar were dropped 2 years later due to lack of evidence. Still, this wouldn't be the last time that Young Dolph was shot. On the 27th of September 2017, Young Dolph was shot in LA. This time, Gotti was named as a person of interest in the shooting, and once again, someone from Yo Gotti's camp was arrested for the shooting. A man named Corey McClendon, who had been seen in multiple photos with Gotti, was picked up by the cops for this shooting. Just like Black Youngstar, Corey McClendon was eventually released because of lack of enough evidence. And unfortunately, Dolph was eventually killed in November 2021. He was shopping at Makeda's Cookies when he was ambushed by 2 gunmen who jumped out of a white Mercedes. And these men wasted no time in letting the bullets fly. Dolph was shot 22 times, and the entire city was speculating that Yo Gotti was connected to this shooting. But all of these are just rumors, as the cops haven't confirmed that Gotti was connected to this shooting. Instead, this was why Memphis PD ramped up security and stood guard at the Privé restaurant. Although he was eventually killed, Young Dolph would forever remain a legend. His story is a classic case of when the man in front of the gun is the one who lives forever. Dolph lived life on his terms by remaining an independent artist and still achieving so much success. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can also click on the card on your screen, and I'll be waiting on the other side with more content.